So you went there, you built your business. Life's going along as life does, I imagine.
Yep.
And we're going to take a couple of leaps here, because I don't want to dig all into your entire life, because there's one particular thing that brought you to everyone's attention. So there you are.
Was that me being Mr. August in Take a Break magazine?
It wasn't Mr. August in Take a Break magazine. I believe that comes later.
It was actually earlier, but the nation missed a trick by not discovering my fame at that point.
Your hidden talents.
Yeah, my hidden talents at that point. Yeah. Mr. August Take a Break magazine, circa 2001, I think it was, maybe 2000.
It might be on archive.org, so someone can have a dig for that one. Probably Alex, who does our editing, he'll have a dig around and see if we can find that. So you're trucking along, you're doing what most people do, you're posting on social media, just ducking and diving and doing what you do. And then I believe you posted a poem.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was one of these people. I'd sort of grown my brand to around about 900 people. And if I got any interaction on Tinternet at all and on Twitter at all, I was like dead chuffed, because I could go for weeks with being ignored by billions. And every now and again, somebody would like me. Somebody might repost something. I remember once putting something down and it got, I think, 300 likes or something. I thought, that's it, I've made it. But that was like a one-off, an absolute one-off. Yeah. So I was roundly ignored by absolutely everybody, Hayden. I mean, absolutely everybody. But I quite enjoyed it, because I've got a very feministy type wife. The kind of wife that she used to feed me a diet of when we were sort of dating. Erica Young books and Marilyn French books, and I'd do that thing of reading them and pretending that I really enjoyed them in order to impress a very feministy type wife or wife to be. But actually, when you sort of hang around the slippery creek, you shouldn't be surprised when you fall in. So a lot of the stuff that I was reading stuck, even though I was reading it basically to get in a knickers. A lot of the stuff stuck. And she's a fairly feisty lass, is our lass. I remember one of my favourite stories about our lass is that when she was younger, a bunch of builders were saying, "Get your tits out," every time she walked past. So one day she did. She just stopped, went, "Boom, have a look at them lads. Maybe next time you'll think twice." And they all sort of shriveled in absolute horror. And that was that. So she's a feisty feisty lass is our Jules. And I've got, we got married. I've got stepdaughters. I've got my own daughter. I've got one son. And so I'm around women a lot. And the truth of the matter is that as a bloke, I'm sort of concerned. I was concerned for them, and you can't help but listen to their concerns. So one way or another, when she started banging on about trans women taking over women's spaces, I couldn't help but listen. Now, it also struck me as just being fundamentally wrong. The idea that a human being can change sex, to me, is bonkers, because it offends my liberal ideas, because that's so far outside of liberalism, we don't go there. And it absolutely goes against my traditional ideas as well, because men cannot become women. Hey, it's as simple as that. They just can't. So I started tweeting, and the more I looked into it, the more dangerous I thought it was. The idea that a bloke should be able to go, self-identify and go into a woman's space. The whole idea of a man growing a ponytail, sticking on a dress, and joining a women's team. Like most blokes, I found that utterly offensive. It sort of cut right across my sense of fair play. So I was posting on it, but still roundly being ignored by the millions. I was literal nobody.
Just jump in there. When you were saying about how the effect it had on you when you saw it, I don't know if you were similar. Most of my life never cared about, we used to call them when I was younger, transvestites, and I never cared.
I never even knew they existed.
I mean, I did. One lived across the road from me, but it was never a thing. It was just, that's how they want to live. Don't care. Whatever. They weren't doing anything to anybody else. And you know, to me, what struck me is I always assumed that's what trans was. You know, the people that had to live as if they were something else to give them peace. So to me, it was like, well, fair fucks to you. Away you go. Live your life. Be happy. And that's what confused me when I first saw it online. Because my initial thing was, why is everyone down on the trans people? What do they do?
Yeah.
And then you see people like Debbie Hayton and others, which fit the mold of, I'm just cracking on with what I do.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was this whole world of basically blokes saying they were women. End of. Not doing anything else. I'm a woman. Move over for me.
Yeah.
And that's what got me. I think for a lot of guys, we didn't know all that was going on because we saw what we're supposed to see, which was, oh, that's what trans people, yeah, whatever. That's what they are.
Yeah, old style trannies, as we used to call them. Absolutely. I was chatting to an old style tranny, and they described themselves as an old style tranny, and they were absolutely horrified by the whole thing as well. So when I saw this happening, it so offended my sense of rationality and reasonableness that it was almost as though I was in a fight with flat earthers, and there was nothing that they were going to say, as far as I could tell, that was going to convince me that the earth is fucking flat, because it's not. It's round. Okie dokie. So you had these argy-barges, and yes, it appears that I did retweet what was described to me by the police as a offensive limerick, but in actual fact was a piece of just a feminist verse from a woman called Ali B.
Well, this is the first thing that caught me about your show when it first came to attention, long before I knew about you or Sarah or anybody else, was that, hang on, someone posted something on Twitter.
Yeah. And
it was a limerick or a poem. And then the police came round.
Yeah. A bit odd, that, innit?
And then, well, I couldn't get my head round it. Because if you committed an offence, if you said we should kill this person now, yeah, all right, a knock on the door is the least of your worries.
Yeah.
But I think it's, and I'm going to ask you to put it in your words, I think it's not only the fact the police came and had a knock on your door, it's what they said to you when they knocked on your door.
Yeah, so I'd gone down to Tesco's for our lass. And that's going to offend some of the feminists, because apparently I don't go shopping for our lass. I go shopping because I'm a working member of the family, and why should the man not do the shopping? But in my mind, and to be fair, in our lass's mind, I was doing the shopping for our lass because she gives me the list and says, go get this. So I go get it, so I'm doing the shopping for our lass. Simple as that.
Yeah,
okay.
There you go.
So I was down there, and suddenly I got a phone call from work. And it was my managing director. Now, my managing director, I own the company, so whilst it sounds like he's my boss, he's not my boss. I employ him. He said, "H, you're never going to believe this. We just had the police knocking on the office door, coming to see us. They want to speak to you." So I've got a very sensible managing director, and he didn't give them my name or number. Well, he gave them my name. They already knew my name. He didn't give them my number, but said, "Look, if you want to give him a ring, this is his number." It was a fella called PC Gull. So I duly rang PC Gull up, and that's when he told me that he turned up at my place of work during working hours to see me because I'd been posting on Twitter transphobic hatred towards the transgender community. And what he said to me was that somebody from down south was so concerned about what I'd posted that they felt as though my employees were in danger. The trans employees down at my company in Immingham were in danger. Now, as I mentioned, Immingham is not sort of at the front end of the 21st century.
Not terribly cosmopolitan.
No, it's somewhere in the back end of the 17th century, and that's being kind. They still hunt and burn witches and go, oh, look, a flying thing, and it's a plane. It's like that. It's a little bit like that. So when he said that he was very afraid for the trans people in my company, I just thought, what trans people? There ain't no trans people in my company. I don't think there's any trans people on the whole of Immingham Dock. There might be. Who knows? But certainly it's into problems. So I explained this to PC Gull. And he said, yeah, fine, Mr. Miller, absolutely fine. But nevertheless, this person is so concerned about what you've been posting on social media that if you do have any trans people, they're probably terrified. And I just say, well, that's absolutely nonsense. In all the years of business, we've never had a single tribunal. We've never been called out for anything that was a contravention of the Equality Act. Or the acts that preceded the Equality Act before 2010. So it's just absolute nonsense. So it was at this point that I asked him, I said, look, PC Gull, have I committed a crime? And he said, oh no, Mr. Miller, you've not committed a crime. I said, well, if I've not committed a crime, why are you ringing me? And this is when he said the immortal words, I need to check your thinking. And I had the same reaction as you. I laughed. And I said, let me get this straight. You're a police officer. And he went, yes. And I said, I've not committed a crime. And he said, no. And I said, you're ringing me to check my thinking. And he said, yes. And I said, have you any idea what that makes you sound like? And he said, no. And I said, well, there's this book by a bloke called George Orwell called 1984. He'd never heard of it. But I told him that 1984 was a dystopian novel and not a police how-to manual. And all of that just was like zoom straight over his head. Didn't understand the reference at all. I said, so we had this conversation. I said, okie dokie then. So if I've not committed a crime, why are you ringing me? He said, because we've got 30 tweets, at least 30 tweets that are very transphobic and which we've decided are designed to cause great distress to and show hatred of the transgender community, particularly the trans community at your place of work, the shit shovelers of Immingham Dock.
Yeah.
Right, okie dokie. So this is right. Let's just get this absolutely straight. So none of them are criminal? No. Right. Which one, in your professional opinion, comes closest to, if I'd just gone one little step further, it would have sort of breached over into criminality? And he said to me, well, there's a limerick. And I said, right, okie dokie. I said, well, to be fair, I don't actually recall writing any limericks, but go on, what is this limerick? He said, no, you didn't write it, but you retweeted it. Ooh. I said, so it's not even my limerick then? He said, no, but you retweeted it. And by retweeting it, you were spreading your transphobic hate and causing the trans people to feel distress as you showed hatred to that community. I'm like, mate, you've got to be kidding me. And then he said something that which really disturbed me. He said, what you have to think about, Mr. Miller, is that if your HR department find out that you've been doing this, you could be in a lot of trouble. And I said, well, PC Gull, what you may not realise is that I am the fucking HR department. And even if I did have a HR department, I wouldn't be employing any idiots who are going to be causing me trouble because I'd like to limerick. So there was that. And then we had we had quite a long conversation, actually. We were on the phone for 34 minutes of a police constable's time. And it finished off with, then he started talking to me. He kept referring to me being the suspect and the other person being the victim. And I was saying, PC Gull, will you stop using the term victim? Nobody's a victim here. There aren't any victims. And he said, well, that's the term that we've got to use, victim. I said, but that offends me. You talk about language, and you referring to this victim in the absence of a victim, it infers that I am a suspect and that I have caused something to happen to this victim. I said, do you not understand how offensive that is to me? And he just said, well, that's the language you've got to use. I'm sorry, you've got to do. If you want to make a complaint, then you have to make a complaint about it. I said, well, I will be making a complaint about it. And this conversation went on and on and on. And that brought us to the next immortal line of PC Gull, where he said to me, he said, Mr. Miller, what you've got to understand is that sometimes in the womb, a male brain accidentally grows the wrong body parts. Oh. And that's what being trans is. And I just laughed and said, "You've got to be kidding me, mate." I said, "You can't." I said, "You cannot believe that." He said, "Oh yeah, I can. I've been on a course." Absolutely deadpan as that, mate. Deadpan. I had your reaction. He was like, I really felt for PC Gull because he had been on a course, and the courses that they go on are run by offshoots of mermaids.
Yeah.
Now we've got full transcripts of mermaids courses to police officers, where they talk about lady brains and male brains and how God can accidentally put the wrong brain into the wrong body, and it grows, when it should be growing, a love for handbags and makeup, it accidentally grows a cock. Now that's what mermaids that's what mermaids teach, and this is what PC Gull had learned. So bless him, PC Gull. He did all of this with absolutely no sense of irony.
Absolute sincerity.
Total and utter sincerity. It was quite sad, really. But the long and the short of it was that I was advised, and then I was advised a month or so later by an inspector. And by the way, in between, an assistant chief constable had gone national in the press, saying that they had 31 transphobic tweets and that their intervention was necessary in order to stop me before it's escalated into criminality.
Genocide.
Yeah, well,
genocide.
You laugh.
Oh no, I'm
you
deadly
laugh.
serious. That's been used.
No, you laugh because what I had engaged in with this hate speech, and by the way, the posh word for hate speech is antilocution.
Oh.
Yes, antilocution. That's our word of the day. Antilocution. Okay.
Graham, would you write that down for me, please?
So I'd engaged in antilocution, which is disparaging talk about a group. Okay. Now, this apparently is stage 1 of 5, and stage 5 is genocide. So I would it's
a 5-step program.
Yes, it's a 5-step shuffle to genocide. So me saying trans women are men,
that makes it sound so easy.
I am like 5 steps away from being literal Hitler and committing genocide,
murdering.
And we know this because this would eventually we went to the High Court over this, because I said this was absolute nonsense what the police were doing, and that by the police telling me that the thing I needed to do was to not tweet, we said, bullshit, we're not going to do that. So I discovered that I got this thing called the non-crime hate record.